We start with this first one, whose woods these are, I think I know. So he's in some type of woods. He knows the person who owns them, but his house is in the village. So he's like, I'm not going to come across this person. He's not going to see me stopping here while it's snowing within these woods. Maybe he mentions this because he's not supposed to be there, or maybe he just wants to be alone. But that's kind of what's happening in this stanza. We go to the next one. My little horse must think it's queer to stop without a farmhouse near. So the horse is wondering, why are we stopping? I don't see a farmhouse. I don't see anything that I'm supposed to be doing. This is not a place that we would normally stop. Then he says, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. Okay, so he's saying that the horse is wondering, why are we out at night between this woods and frozen lake? I just don't see a purpose here to be here. So how does the horse react? He gives his harness bells a shake just to say, are we moving on, or are we lost? Is there some reason that we're here? The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Therefore, we're getting some type of silence here. There's a slight wind, and maybe the snow falling is the only other sound that he hears. Otherwise, it's silent. We're not hearing any other animals or any other sounds that can interrupt him. And then the final stanza, the woods are lovely, dark, and deep. So he's appreciating the woods here, and he says they're lovely, they're dark, they're deep. He's right in the middle of these woods. But he says, I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Okay, so his horse is right. We got to get moving. We got to continue. Okay, so he has obligations and he has responsibilities, and miles to go before I sleep could be, he's heading home. Maybe he's heading to an inn or somewhere, where he can finally take some rest. Okay, so we get the basic meaning or message of the poem, but now we're going to look a little bit more deeply to see what the underlying message might be. Let's start with that first stanza again. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. We get kind of this sense of isolation, maybe loneliness. We think of woods filling up with snow. That could be symbolic of maybe this person's life is filling up with this snow, which is cold. It is maybe uncomfortable. As snow falls, the more and more of it, maybe there's a weight to it. So maybe he's feeling some type of weight or some type of down period in his life. When we go to that next stanza, the darkest evening of the year, this also could be symbolic of, this is a person at his lowest point. Maybe this is somebody who's depressed, somebody who feels like giving up. Between the woods and frozen lake, we can look at woods and frozen lake as between maybe depression and anxiety or darkness. Woods sometimes indicate where bad things happen. And so we get maybe this dark feeling that he's having at this time. We go to the third stanza. So his horse doesn't understand this. I don't know if the horse is picking up on his depression. He says there's no reason to be out here or to feel this way. So he's asking if there's some mistake. This can be also, wondering, is there a reason that you're feeling this way? Have you made a mistake that has led you to this? Maybe you've pushed off a spouse or a lover. Maybe you've made an error in your profession. Was there something that happened that caused this? And then we look at that last stanza. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. And I think if anybody's been in a depression, they would see that you can really fall into it. You can really cause yourself to think about all the dark and deep things that are going on in your life. And in a way that that depression is kind of lovely. It's almost like I can, just relish this depression and it gets worse and worse and worse. And maybe that's what he's feeling. But then he says, I have promises to keep. So we think of those promises as maybe responsibilities. Maybe he's got children. Maybe he's got work obligations. Maybe he's got other obligations to people that will keep him from falling further into this depression. And then miles to go before I sleep. We get that. That could be I have too much stuff before I could even think about, we think of that sleep as death. I have miles to go before I die. And then he repeats it, and it's almost like there are two ways that we can look at this. Well, there's probably multiple ways we can look at it, but the two ways I could look at it are miles to go before I sleep. It seems like I have a lot of responsibilities, and he repeats that to emphasize those responsibilities and miles to go before I sleep. This is going to continue on. But another thing, this could be a mantra that he says to himself to kind of pull himself out of these depression states. And miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. I can't relish in this depression. I've got to pull myself out. I've got to do some things. We have these two underlying concepts. We have the outside message, which is somebody stopping in woods, watching it snow, then moving on. But we get that higher level or that meta type message that is saying maybe this is somebody contemplating suicide during a episode of depression. And the horse and his responsibilities kind of bring him out of this, and he's able to continue on.